Hello, everybody, and I screwed up again. The jingle logo sound. Have to get better at this. At least we have the visual of the Constellation Jungle logo. Welcome, everybody. Fittingly, I'm in Frankfurt, Germany, while we hear the news about the new replacement attempt, both by the EU and the US government, to make up for the late fall invalidation of the Safe Harbor Agreement called the Privacy Shield. Let's bring everybody up to speed what the Safe Harbor Agreement was. It basically allowed, under certain conditions, varying European data privacy security standards for US companies to store information about Europeans, EU members, not just Europeans, there's more Europeans than EU members, in the US and handle those data centers by the US. Data privacy, let's call them like this, activist, Austrian student, Max Schrems, sued for all the instances the EU Safe Harbor Agreement was invalidated in October. Check out my blog post about that then there. And since then, the US government and the EU leadership has been under pressure to replace it. They set a self-imposed deadline of end of January. Not surprising, they missed it. The good news is they didn't miss it by too much. And what they did, basically, they hammered out a new agreement dubbed the EU-US Privacy Shield. The main pieces there is that for the first time, and some Europeans will be proud from that perspective, there's a written statement coming from, I think it's the NSA, that there's not going to be systematic mass spying on EU citizens' data stored in the US, something which was the main concern, the main reason why the Safe Harbor piece was invalidated last year by the EU High Court. Furthermore, there's going to be an ombudsman looking at any potential complaints. So if any European person has a problem, there's an ombudsman, interestingly located in the State Secretary. And there's going to be a yearly review of if both areas are working well, happy, and if the US is not doing, what is the main concern, any mass spying on the European data. Now, interesting enough, that agreement was done Tuesday night. Wednesday morning, the data privacy experts, each of the 28 EU countries has a data privacy experts, were meeting in Brussels to review that. And there's interesting, not much news about where they are. The important thing to understand is with the invalidation of a common EU agreement, it's now back to all 28 countries to pass the privacy shield. Now, you can imagine in any place to pass in a single country might not be an easy thing. But with 28, it has very much the impression to me of a Tower of Babel situation or Babel situation, where too many language, too many political situations might make it very, very hard for the EU to even agree to that level of privacy where it is enough. I leave it to the privacy experts and so on to that. The important thing is, what does it mean for enterprise, right? You have to figure out what is your exposure. And the big challenge there is that pretty much all software as a service and many of the internal deployments, even before cloud, leverage the global single instance of storing information in one place. And that's where the trouble starts. We know there's over 3,000 US companies who have signed and registered for the Safe Harbor Agreement, meaning they are storing European data on data centers in the US, and you can't really complain from an IT perspective so far for a company who has maybe 2 data centers doing 2-3 billion of revenue in the US and handling like the 20-30%, 40% maybe of business in Europe on those servers. That is the companies which are in trouble with, because the only way out of it is to sign a so-called model agreement with the relevant data privacy agency in the single states. That means a lot of work, is very onerous, not an easy thing to do. Nothing has happened with people being out of compliance so far, despite it not being legal to store the information. But I would not recommend you to just bank on that being an easy situation going forward forever. So the exposure, the question is really, what is your exposure to this? How much of European business are you doing? Are you not in compliance? And what are the downsides if the worst case happens, and then model and track back from there. Yeah, it's not only a problem with the EU. Same thing happened with Russia, right? As you know, Russia mandated 1st of October that all Russian consumer business and financial data. I think there's a third category, so I don't know it by heart right now, has to be stored in Russia. And we saw that many clients made the decision, pulled out data out of global single instance, removed websites hosted centrally, put them back into Russia if they thought the exposure was there. Nothing is public about fines being there, but obviously the fear is that Russia might be going for some hard currency and go after well-known brands and find them there. The overall bad news, it's relatively easy for the big guys. Large companies have multiple data centers, also on the internet service provider side. Large providers will sign these model agreements, have large legal teams, can hammer those out. Interesting, there is some exposure for the large guys. Facebook doesn't have much of European data centers, and is obviously one of the big data privacy concerns when you talk to Europeans here, as I'm here in Frankfurt, still catching my flight back to the US. So it will be interesting to see what the consequences are ultimately for that. But for enterprises, if you run your HR systems and so on, don't bank on this being solved in any way as it has been solved in the past. Start looking what your vendor can offer them. Do they offer the data centers? But more importantly, it's not just the data center. You must find a way how data can be spliced, but still brought together for that global single view you want to have, for instance, knowing how many people you pay or what your payroll exposure overall is and so on. So no easy situation for you to do, but also very clear that there is no quick fix as expected to a certain point, but now we have the evidence, and now it's 2016, and start for you to plan how far, when you want to be in compliance with the overall US, EU data privacy laws. Hope you found this was helpful. I realize there's going to be commentary about my hair again. Yes, it doesn't look as good as it should, but I thought it was more important to get the information out to you. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.